Week webinar. Tonight's theme is Calling It Quits, Considering a Future Without Children with Megan Downer. I'm Nicola Bertossi from Fertility New Zealand, and it's my pleasure to welcome you tonight. For those of you who aren't already familiar with what Fertility New Zealand does, we're a charity and we exist to hold the hand of Kiwis who are experiencing fertility issues or want to build whānau. We support them throughout their journey, and we've started providing more support for people at the end of their journey. So there's our website for more information on what Fertility New Zealand does. So tonight's speaker, I'm very pleased to welcome here, has worked alongside people experiencing infertility and reproductive loss for more than a decade. She operates as an independent counsellor in Auckland. So Megan will give a presentation, and if you have any questions or comments, please just type them into the chat box and Megan will respond to them at the end of her talk. So thank you very much, and over to you, Megan.
Thanks, Nicola. Well, welcome to everyone that's watching this webinar this evening. You're most likely to be watching this as you've been unable to fulfill your dream of family and considering whether to continue this journey. I am sorry that your dream of having a family or the desired family size has been unfulfilled. This loss is such a difficult one. As Nicola explained, I'm a counsellor in private practice who works alongside those facing fertility uncertainty and pregnancy loss. And although this has not been my lived experience, working in this area for over 14 years, I've heard a number of your stories and acknowledge the heartbreaking loss that this is. This webinar has been compiled with this experience in mind and several excellent reading resources which will be on the Fertility New Zealand website following this webinar. I hope this webinar provides some guidance as you make your own decision. Making the decision to stop treatment following a journey of infertility is such a difficult one. It's difficult because the future is so uncertain. You may wonder if you've given up too early or if more treatment was going to be the one. You may worry about whether you'll regret the decision in the future and be concerned that your partner may be in a different place than you, and be worried about the future, what the future will hold and how you'll face it without the family you desired. The decision to stop treatment and begin the next journey in your life is a personal one, and it's reached at different times for everyone. For some, this decision may come as they've decided not to have fertility treatments. For others, it may come after failed attempts, or they've run out of options or find them unacceptable. Partners may be ready to stop. Others may be faced with secondary infertility and wondering if they should continue, and some may have had several pregnancy losses. Statistics show that the number of childless couples is on the increase, so although it may not feel like it, many people are being faced with this decision. Statistics New Zealand 2013 showed 41 out of 100 families were couples without children, and it is predicted that in 2038, 250,000 more couples are projected to be living without children. The birth rate is as suppressed now as it was following the First World War and the Depression in the 30s. You're therefore one among many faced with this decision. Our society is very much geared towards having children, and this shapes the ideas and dreams often from such a young age. It takes a lot of courage and is very challenging to be childless, in a society that has many messages about the value of motherhood and fatherhood. Bear with me. The emotional response. I want to mention the range of emotions that you may be feeling when you reach this junction at this point in your life. You may feel sad, anxious, stressed, disappointed, uncertain. You may feel regret and feelings of guilt that you're even contemplating the decision. The period before we make any decision is often very unsettling and stressful, and this, of course, is a life-changing one. Be gentle with yourself. Treat yourself as you would a friend who's going through a really difficult time. You don't need to make this decision on your own. So seek some support in talking through what you want to do. You could see a counsellor, talk to a partner, friend, family member, someone that understands you. This is your decision, so do choose someone that will listen and not offer advice or judge you. Many going through this experience have commented that others have offered stories of the miracle baby. And although well-meaning, it's not always helpful as you're deciding whether to continue your journey to parenthood. It's important that you understand that you're not alone. There are several books on the subject and online support that may be helpful. And as I've mentioned, they'll be on the Fertility New Zealand website. So, how do you go about making such a major life decision? Here are some things that you may like to consider. Your emotional well-being. Consider if you have the emotional capacity to cope with the possibility of more disappointment and loss in the future. The emotional roller coaster that accompanies the journey of infertility and treatments can have a huge toll, and it's normal to find this a challenge, but consider if it's impacting on your mental health. Jodie Day refers to this in her book, when the amount of energy you are investing in your dreams becomes unbalanced, when your daydreams are sucking the life force out of your life. Your physical health. Consider the impact of the fertility journey on your physical health. Your relationships. In Amy Wenzel's book, she suggests if you have a partner, it is important to adopt a relationship-focused orientation rather than making the decision from an individual perspective. Talk to your partner about how you're both feeling and how you're coping. Consider the impact of fertility treatments on your relationship. Think about whether you're communicating with your partner or whether you're feeling detached. Think about your friendships and family and whether you're in the person that you want to be around them. The opportunity cost of continuing treatment. The demands of infertility journey on your time is very significant. Consider what you have put on hold and what you have lost. Think about how these things fit with the values, your values and your views in life. Consider how you'd feel about those lost opportunities in 5 years, 10 years, maybe 15 years' time. Are you at the point where you want to invest in a different future? The odds of getting pregnant. There was a study done in Aberdeen, Scotland, on women's decision-making at the end of treatment and the circumstances that influenced their decision. Many felt that the medical opinion following treatment was more honest than before treatment, and that having this information informed their decision-making process. So perhaps you can consider making an appointment with your fertility specialist and ask about the chances of pregnancy to your specific situation. Financial costs. You could do some financial planning and think about where you may need to call it quits in the context of your future goals. Where do you draw the line? This could be an age, the number of treatments, what treatments are acceptable to you and your partner if you have one. Anne Altamore, who is a counsellor and a life coach who has a lived experience of childlessness, she suggests that having an end date helps to set a boundary. The path of least regret. Many worry that they will regret their decision in the future. Well, no one knows what will happen in the future, and therefore it is important to make a thorough and a thoughtful decision with the knowledge that you have available to you at the time. Perhaps you may want to write down your decision-making process. In the future, when you look back on this decision, you can take that piece of paper out and you can remind yourself that it was a hard decision and one that you gave a lot of thought to. The journey of infertility has many losses. However, once you've made your decision to no longer pursue this journey and invest in a different future, you're likely to feel significant grief as the hope associated with treatment is no longer there. Letting go of the dream of family is such a major loss. Research, however, has shown that along with this grief is often a feeling of relief. Relief from the roller coaster of treatment and of uncertainty, the opportunity to invest into something new. Here are some ideas for managing your grief. It is important to firstly recognise that the loss of your dream will be with you forever. But as you allow yourself to experience the feelings and you accept your new normal and adjust to a different life, the grief will become more manageable in time, where initially it will feel immense. Much like a strong wave that knocks you off your feet and takes your breath away, eventually you will find your way up to the surface. And although the waves will continue at different points and milestones in your life, you will learn to surf the waves rather than to let them take you away. Grief is exhausting, and how you can recover from the waves, grief is exhausting, so discover how you can recover from the waves of grief. Think about what brings you comfort when you're feeling distressed. It might be a cuddle, a movie, a walk in your favourite place. Find some really good support. So speak with friends, family, a counsellor, someone who will listen and acknowledge the loss. There are some really helpful books which I mentioned earlier, which will be on the website. The grief of childlessness is just a disenfranchised grief. So one that's often hidden, silenced, and largely unrecognised by our society. There is no formal ceremony to publicly acknowledge and make meaning of your loss. So considering your own ceremony can be really helpful. Winnie Duggan and Christine Bannon's book that I've listed often offers some really creative ways to acknowledge the infertility journey using ritual and ceremony. There are also some celebrants who offer services for reproductive loss, and I'll leave these contacts as well. We had our first public ceremony in Auckland and Wellington last year to acknowledge the loss of infertility, and you may like to consider something like this. We will be offering another public ceremony next year, and there is discussion about bringing this to Christchurch as well. Amy Wenzel's book suggests that you do write down a plan for those times in the future when your grief is likely to resurface. In this plan, you can list your support people, those coping skills and strengths that have helped you through your journey of infertility, the warning signs when you're getting into a negative space, and how to challenge these thoughts and what you might do to help yourself in these times. Creating a meaningful life. Once you have come to your decision and you are not in limbo or in transition phase of waiting to be parents, you're able to fully embrace and consider a different future. It might not be the future that you dreamed of and hoped for, but it can be a fulfilling and a valued one. As you begin this process of creating a new life, these are some of the things that can help you on your way. Creating meaning. Creating meaning does not mean finding a silver lining. Reproductive loss is a major one. To create meaning from your experience of reproductive loss is to consider what you have been through, how it's changed you and touched your life, brought you closer perhaps to your partner or others, and what strengths and skills you have acquired during that journey. This may be difficult to envisage at the beginning of your grief journey, but as the natural process of grief unravels, it will become easier. Many couples that I see, they tell me that they have a level of compassion and empathy for others that they didn't have before. Many are surprised with the journey that they have endured and the determination and the courage that they have shown. They feel much stronger than before. Some have a much clearer perspective on what is important in their life and can be grateful for what they have. Some have learnt how to manage depression and anxiety. Others talk of growth and of wisdom. It is from this meaning making that you may decide what you want to do and with what you have learnt. In the discussion about grief and loss, I mentioned a ceremony and ritual to help your grieving process, and many can find a meaning from commemorating their loss. Ceremony is an emotional and a sad time, but it is also a time to reflect on how you've made some meaning from your experience. Shifting your beliefs. The beliefs that we hold are shaped not only in our childhood, but also through our experiences as adults. Your experience of reproductive loss will have changed many views that you have about how you now see the world and the future. Think about those beliefs. Think about those beliefs that have shifted in a negative direction and consider some more balanced and healthy ones. What we believe and therefore what we think has a profound effect on how we feel. So shifting those negative beliefs will help you to weather the more difficult times. For example, you may have said to yourself, I will never be happy if I'm not a mother. You can shift this to something like others, I will have good days and I'll have bad days, but I can experience happiness. Redefining your priorities and your goals. I imagine that much of your life has probably been centered around treatments, planning, dealing with disappointment and loss, going to appointments, trying various alternatives and researching options. Once you've made the decision to stop treatment, you will have the space and the time to reconsider your priorities and your goals. Think about these things in a much broader context than your reproductive loss. Think about your goals in the context of a valued and of a fulfilling life. Tonight, we have discussed a framework for considering the decision. I've just got to move this. And we've talked about grief and how to support yourself in this process. And we've discussed how you might go about creating a meaningful and a fulfilling life. I do hope that this has been helpful, and I welcome any questions that you may have. Okay. Right. Oh, it looks like someone's lost audio. Can you all hear me? I don't know where. Okay, so I've got a question here. Hi, Nicola. Someone's just actually said they've lost audio, so I'm just wondering. Mine is fine. Audio's good there. Okay, I might just continue. So one of the questions, if we've decided to stop treatment, how can I explain this to others briefly? Good question, and hopefully without getting too emotional. Well, the first thing is to take a deep breath, because often when we breathe deeply, it can help to calm us. And that's particularly helpful if we're feeling emotional. So just take your time, take a deep breath. I guess the answer to that probably depends on what you've told people already. So some people have been really open about their journey. So if you have been open about your journey, I would just suggest that maybe you give a fairly brief but an honest response, that you've had a journey, a difficult journey of infertility and treatments, if that's been the case, and that now you have decided that you're not going to continue that journey. You know, I'm just trying to think of what you could say that would, you probably don't want to discuss it. So it would be quite important to make sure that in your answer, it's sounding quite final, that you're not really up for a discussion with someone. Does that answer your question? Okay, so I've got another one. Have you got any suggestions on how to work on differences? So if one partner is willing to explore the donor use and the other partner is not willing to entertain the idea, that is really tough. That's really tough. Yeah. I guess one of the things I would suggest in that situation is that you actually speak with a counsellor. So all the clinics obviously have counsellors, and I would be asking for a pre-decision session with the counsellor. That is really difficult, and certainly as a counsellor I have been with couples where that has been the case. So I think it's useful to have someone independent to help the two of you to understand where you are up to. And that conversation can often be very difficult, in my experience, just with both of you together. So if you have a counsellor there, they will be able to just sort of facilitate the discussion so that that each of you are able to fully explore and explain your points of view. So yeah, I would definitely suggest in that situation that you seek some support from a counsellor, because that is tough. Yeah. I mean, in those sessions, often we would be exploring with the partner, you know, what their sort of ideas are around donation. Sometimes people have experiences in their own family that impact on how they see the use of a donor. sometimes people can be really misinformed about donation. So it might be that the counsellor is able to offer some really factual and well-researched information about donation. Often people considering donation have a lot of fear around the future. So it's quite good for the counsellor to be able to talk about the research around donation and the impacts on family and children. So that can be helpful as well. Hopefully that's answered your question. Are there any more questions for me?
It looks like that might be all of the questions and comments tonight. Megan?
Yeah, great.
So, look, thank you for a great webinar, really helpful talk on what's a difficult subject. So thank you so much, Megan.
You're welcome.
There will be 2 webinars on Sunday night, one on fertility treatment at 8 p.m. and the other on donation and surrogacy at 4 o'clock. So I hope that some of you will be joining us for those. But for now, thank you all for coming and joining in Fertility Week, and especially thank you to Megan for sharing your time and expertise with us.
You are really welcome. Yeah. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for your lovely comments.
Good night.
Night.
Yes, I will leave the link on, I'll put it up on the Fertility Week site where you hit the, if you click the name of the webinar, I'll put it up there.
Brilliant. That's great, because all those books will be on there, and also the online support as well. Yeah. There's some really great resources out there. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Megan. Good night.
Night.